Welcome to Smashterpieces, a casual walk through the history of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. My name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And if you're new here, what we are doing on this show is we are playing one game for every character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, from 1984's Duck Hunt to 2017's Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. And
did you know that there are too many characters in Super Smash Bros.?
And did you know we're only gonna get more? 4 more?
At least 4.
Minimum? We are being brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and now Nintendo World Report.
Yeah, so like halfway through the time since we started doing the show, me and Joe both ended up joining Nintendo World Report. So we were just like, hey, what if NWR had another podcast? Because I know they all like podcasts over there, considering there's like 5 concurrent podcasts. So why not just add another? You know?
Yeah. We have joined alongside such hits as Radio Free Nintendo and other shows that are escaping me at this current time.
The NWR Newscast, Radio Trivia, Connectivity, Talk Nintendo, Nintendo News Report.
Whole bunch of them. So if you're interested in
I was just reading down this list. The NWR Newscast ended like 6 years ago. What am I saying?
If you're interested in more podcasts, well, they've got you covered. But we're not here to talk about other podcasts. We're here to talk about our podcast. And on our podcast today, we are talking about a game. That game is representing fighter numbers. Just one. Fighter numbers. I mean, you should understand how it works now. By now,
not if they're listening for the first time.
You know what? You're right. Today's episode is about the game representing fighter number 65, Ridley, released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. It is Super Metroid.
And boy, what a good game this is.
This was my first time playing it ever.
So this was your first time playing any Metroid, right?
Yes, pretty much. I have basically never beaten a Metroid game, and by the time this show is over, minimum gonna have beaten 4, and that's kind of crazy to think about.
Are you like relatively inexperienced with Metroidvania in general?
I think so. I think this might be the first Metroidvania I've ever beaten. I've played others, like I've played Hollow Knight. I've played a little bit of Ori and the Blind Forest, but for the most part, this is the first Metroidvania I've ever beaten. Obviously, if you listen to the Rondo of Blood episode, you know that I've never played Symphony of the Night either. So, yeah, pretty much.
And I have merely started to play Symphony of the Night. But yeah, I mean, what a start to Metroidvania though. Like seriously.
Yeah. This is I don't think that this game hits the level of historical importance as say Street Fighter 2 did in our lineup, but I think it's one of the games that comes real damn close.
I don't know. I think it's big. It defined a genre that is currently huge in the indie space. And, like, yes, Symphony of the Night would come along and codify all of that. But this game did it first. And what year was Symphony of the Night compared to Super Metroid? It was like 4 or 5 years later, right?
I am not entirely sure. It was a PS1 game, so it would have been. That sounds about right. Symphony of the Night. When did you come out, my friend?
97, right?
It is 1997.
And what year are we on for Super Metroid? 94?
94, so that would have been 3 years later. So that's a lot. Like this was the year after Rondo of Blood. That's where Castlevania was at this time, for context.
Yeah, and I mean, Symphony of the Night technically was more inspired by Link to the Past than Super Metroid, but like Super Metroid still was a huge part in making the Metroidvania genre what it is today, what it ever was, in fact. And
I mean, half the genre is named after it, specifically it.
Yes, absolutely. and I think that I really do think that this game is incredible. Like it's kind of along the lines of when we were playing Super Mario World, where there's nitpicks, obviously, but on the whole, I'd say the game largely succeeds at most everything.
This is so anybody that's listened to this show or watched my streams might know that I am not slow to decide, well, I want to move forward, so I'm grabbing a walkthrough. I am not afraid to use a walkthrough, or that makes it sound like I'm brave for using a walkthrough. I have absolutely no qualms with using a walkthrough to get through games because I want to see the game. I was worried upon going into this game that I would be like, all right, well, time to grab the map or the walkthrough. Never, not once. People in the chat helped. I'm not gonna discount that. People in the chat did like sort of push me along. Most people in the chat were willing to like let him try for a bit, and if it seems like he's not gonna figure it out on his own, kind of push him in the right direction. I don't think I was ever straight up told like the solution or something, and it's not like there are a lot of puzzles in Super Metroid anyways. But yeah, I never pulled up a map, I never pulled up a walkthrough, and for me that's kind of impressive and to me says how well a game is designed overall, which sounds kind of narcissistic to say. I'm the benchmark, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the game was so well designed.
You're the benchmark for the average idiot.
Even someone like me did not feel like they needed to resort to a walkthrough or Nintendo power in order to get through this game.
I would say also that you never actually needed help to progress in the game. We mostly helped you out with secrets. Like, like when you asked if you needed to go fight Ridley and we lied to you for the sake of getting you to the Spazer Beam.
Yeah. Which at first, by the way, will say, was actually mad about that until you guys were like, no, we brought you down here to get like a thing you'll actually like. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be funny to make you think that you were ready for Ridley before telling you.
It worked out. Spacer was pretty cool. So another thing that we should bring up, I want to bring up pretty early in the show that was pointed out to us during the credit roll, during my stream at least, or at least it might have been during your stream. I don't remember which stream it was. It was one of them. That this is actually the last game on our list that Gunpei Yokoi worked on. He would die 3 years later in 1997. Rest in peace. But
and
yeah.
Gunpei Yokoi, by the way, he was very important at Nintendo. He created the Game & Watch system. He was, if I remember correctly, he was a big part of why Nintendo became a game company in the first place. Because back when they were still trying out a bunch of different things, trying to see what they wanted to do going forward, because the playing card industry wasn't going to work out for them. If I remember correctly, it was Gunpei Yokoi who had just made his own toy, which became the Ultra Hand. And he just made it for himself. He was playing with it in the break room. And the president of Nintendo at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, noticed him playing with it and was like, hey, that seems like a good idea. Let's do this kind of thing. And they made a couple toys, which eventually turned into video games. And he would go on to work, he'd go on to create the Game & Watch. He produced Kid Icarus, the original Metroid, and it eventually was one of the key people who created the Game Boy.
Yep.
He was incredibly important in Nintendo's history, and he was very tragically taken from us too early, and we owe a lot of the game industry and like what the game industry is today to him. And I think that he made some of the most incredible things that Nintendo had. So yeah, like I didn't realize until it was pointed out that this was the last game from Gunpei Yokoi that we would be playing. But like, he has a hell of a legacy, and by God, he knew what he was doing, and what a game to finish on for him, or at least for our purposes.
Absolutely. I think he might have worked on other games after this. His last, according to his Wikipedia article, his last thing with Nintendo was the Virtual Boy.
Yes,
And
I believe so.
That, as many Nintendo historians might know, Virtual Boy didn't work out so great.
No, not exactly, which was very unfortunate. He actually left Nintendo shortly before, about a year before his death, because of the failure of the Virtual Boy, and would go to Bandai to work on the Wonder Swan.
Yeah, which I don't know anything about the Wonder Swan. Do you?
No, not really. I think it just came to the point where it's like it was very difficult to compete with the Game Boy, which,
yeah, we still see the effects of that today.
and that was something that he helped create. His legacy was still undeniable even then.
But anyways, back to Super Metroid. It's a good game. I got like a few problems with it, because like no game is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect game. So like obviously, I can find a couple of nitpicks, but for the most part, like, this game is super good. The pixel art looks fantastic. Controlling Samus feels overall really, really good. The flow to which you get power-ups is overall pretty good. One of my problems, though, is with one of the main power-ups that she gets being the grapple beam. I don't like the grapple beam.
I figured it out eventually, but it's definitely not really what I'd call great. And like the grapple beam would reappear in Metroid Prime later once the series became 3D, but I don't believe it's ever appeared in 2D again. And I mean, there's only been like 3 2D games in Metroid since then, but I can't remember if Samus Returns has it. But I know Fusion doesn't. I know Zero Mission doesn't. I think there's a reason that they didn't really try to tackle that again in 2D, because it just doesn't work that well.
Not only does it not work that well, but it's the only power-up in the game that I can think of that like legit has another power-up you get soon after it that makes it completely obsolete.
Not even that long afterwards.
Yeah, once you get Space Jump, you're never going to use that damn grapple beam ever again.
And I mean, I'm pretty good at wall jumping in this game. If you're good at wall jumping, you don't even need to get the grapple beam. You can skip it entirely.
Well, not entirely. There are still points that you got to swing over.
Entirely. You can skip it entirely if you're really good at wall jumping.
Huh. Well then.
I know one of our friends, while watching our streams, was saying when he plays, he doesn't get the grapple beam.
It's just not a very good power-up. It doesn't feel good to control. I never really got the hang of it personally. And I also, speaking of the wall jump, I was never able to figure out the wall jump. I tried.
That's okay. The wall jump's optional.
I really did try.
It's not needed to finish the game. Did you ever fall down into the wall jump tutorial?
I did not. I fell down into the Shine Spark tutorial, but not the wall jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. The Shine Spark and wall jump both are meant to be things that you utilize a little more on your second playthrough, so that you could do sequence breaking. And sequence breaking, by the way, and speedrunning techniques are built into this game. They were an intentional part of the game design. And you can actually fight the bosses in reverse order. You can start with Ridley, go to Dragon, go to Phantoon, then go to Kraid.
So is that the first, like, one of the earliest examples in games of, like, a game being made almost specifically for speedrunners?
I would say so.
Because I can't think of another one.
I don't know if it was intentionally for speedrunning specifically, but it was definitely for people that like exploring and like playing games in different ways. And I think it's one of the best things about the game, personally. And it is, unfortunately, we'll talk about this in like 8 years when we get there with Metroid Prime. But like the series would move away from that a little bit later. It would never reach this height of allowing sequence breaking and speedrunning techniques again. Which is very sad, I think, because this game does it so well.
Yeah, I could definitely, like, watching you play and, like, you understood how to do wall jumps. You could do those. And it was just, you were moving through rooms so much faster than I was, especially the rooms where it was like, all right, there's grapple things on these walls. Grapple to the wall and do a pseudo wall jump. Which, by the way, that room sucked. That room was one of my least favorite rooms in the game. Part of the worst area of the game. I hate Meridia.
Meridia's easy if you can wall jump.
Like, I hate Meridia. And even when I was playing through Meridia, one of our friends joked that, like, Meridia is one of his favorite areas because you can skip most of it. And you responded with, it's not really a glowing review if the one thing you can say is that it's good because you can skip it.
Yeah, Meridia. So I do appreciate how much freedom with speedrunning techniques that Meridia gives you. But it's not very fun to play casually.
No, it is not.
It's actually very bad to play casually.
It's my least favorite area. It has the one boss that I dislike. I don't like Dragon. And I think, to be perfectly honest, do any of the bosses have a quick kill like Dragon does?
No, just Dragon.
In other words, the designers agree with me that regular Dragon sucks. That's what I take from that. Like, he's not a fun boss to fight, but also that quick kill is kind of cool and really clever. And I'm glad people like told me about that because it's cool. I like that one. It's for people who do not know, there are like these little turrets on the side of the walls during Dragon's fight. You can destroy them and they start sparking. And if you grapple beam onto that sparking area, then Samus will start to take damage and so will anything touching her. And Dragon has an attack where he picks Samus up and lifts her into the air. So if you grapple onto the thing while he's carrying her, he'll die in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, the Dragon quick kill, I don't know if it means they thought that the fight was terrible, but it is a welcome addition.
That's how I choose to interpret that. Nobody can take that away from me.
Speaking of bosses, I think the bosses in this game are pretty damn good on the whole.
This game has really good bosses.
Yeah.
And like, none of them, it's very weird because up to this point, we've had 2 games where I'd say had super, super good bosses. And that is Rondo of Blood, which they're good bosses, but mainly because, like, comparing them to Castlevania, the original Castlevania, which had awful bosses. Yeah, those are good in comparison, and they're pretty okay on their own. But then, like, past that, Sonic's bosses aren't amazing. They're fine, I guess. Kirby's bosses were fine, I guess. Some of them were kind of fun. Link to the Past are, on the whole, just sort of eh.
They're inoffensive.
Yeah, Mario Land and Mario World are all like the same sort of bosses. Wario Land sort of had some unique bosses, but that game, they suffered from being in a not great game. So, like, this is our first game, I would say, has really, really good bosses just overall. And they're only going to get better. Bosses are only going to get better from here, though it is going to be a little while before our next platformer is not going to have the best bosses, but it'll have fine bosses. Kraid is probably my favorite. I liked Kraid a lot.
I thought Kraid was like the least dynamic.
I'm really proud of myself for figuring out a thing that my roommate didn't figure out because he was playing alongside us for a little bit.
He didn't even tell me.
and it was that he hadn't figured out that if you shoot Kraid's eyes, he will always open his mouth right afterwards.
Oh, I always take that for granted because I've known that since I was a kid. I don't even know how I figured it out. It was so long
I
ago.
don't know how I figured it out either, but I did. So like I liked that. Phantoon is cool, though he's weird. But I like him overall.
I'm proud of beating him while sending him into rage mode often on my first try.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Phantoon's a really cool boss, and he came back later in the seminal work of Metroid with Other M.
Sure did.
There is concept art, but in the bonus gallery for Other M, that suggests that Phantoon is an extra-dimensional wizard whose body is mostly in another dimension, and you're only seeing his hands and head poking through.
Other M is stupid.
Alternatively, there's the fan theory that Phantoon is the ghost of Mother Brain from Metroid 1.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool concept, though it doesn't make a lot of sense. Mother Brain's still alive. But hey, sure. I like the Ridley fight. It's really hard, but like it's hard. So
I can't relate.
Ridley, shut up. Ridley's movement is very erratic. It's hard to predict what he's going to do. So, like, this is going to sound weird. But Ridley reminds me of the Castlevania 1 bosses. But if they were good, because it's all random movement. He only has he only has like 3 attacks. He's got the swoop. He's got the pogo, and he's got the fireballs, and that's pretty much all he does. He didn't do anything else.
Well, he's unpredictable, but he telegraphs what he's doing.
He telegraphs what he's doing, and
he's consistent, too. Like, once you figure out how to dodge an attack, then as long as you notice that attack is happening, you can reliably dodge it.
Yes. And he is, I believe, considered the hardest boss in the game.
Oh, he absolutely is.
Obviously, he should be. Even Mother Brain's not as hard as he is. In fact, Mother Brain's really easy.
Yeah.
Like, surprisingly so. Though she does... So this was pointed out to me after... I believe after I beat her, or after I lost to her the first time, that Mother Brain, you pointed this out to me, has a scripted event at the end of her fight where the player actually takes real damage, and they're scripted. It's scripted. You have to take, I think you said 3 pips worth of damage.
3 full energy tanks.
Yeah, and then, so if you don't have that much health, if you hit 0 during that scripted sequence, you die. You lost the fight. And that sucks. That sucks.
So it's funny. We brought this up with Link to the Past, where when we were talking about like the magic meter against Ganon, and we were like, I would rather they just kill me. And I still feel that way.
But this is a different situation.
Like, I still feel that way. I'm happy that they just killed us instead of just leaving it going forever. But I would rather they just kill me doesn't mean I think it would be good if they just killed me.
Well, so this isn't even I feel like they respect me because they just killed me. It's hey, I know you guys have the code to do a scripted sequence that takes me down to 1 HP because you did it 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
That's how that sequence should have been done. Like,
I think they realized that the Mother Brain fight was easy and they wanted to artificially make it harder.
I guess, like, it's one thing when you walk into Ganon and you don't have the tools, you straight up don't have the tools to beat him, but it still lets you fight him. It's another thing where, like, hey, you know all that health you've gotten over the course of the game? Well, 3 of them don't matter. Pretend you have 3 less for this fight only, for an arbitrary thing that we put in.
Like, why don't, like, if they want if they want you to have, like, if they want you to go down quicker against her, why not make her do more damage?
She absolutely could do more damage. It's not like her attacks are that hard to dodge. Her attacks are so easy to dodge that this sequence has to be scripted.
And, like, fun fact, if you don't have 3 energy tanks, the fight's unwinnable.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you are at this fight, then the door behind you to go back and explore more has been locked.
Yep. So, like, this is... I don't like that aspect of the final boss. And for the most part, those are my only 3 big complaints about the... No, I got one more. Those are my big 3 complaints about the game, being Meridia, Grapple Beam, the scripted sequence in Mother Brain. The last one, because I want to get the complaints out of the way so we can talk about, like, I don't want this to be like we did with Link to the Past, where we were just like, you know why it's good. Here's the bad parts. Because we did that during Link to the Past, and I don't feel super great about that. But the other thing, and I know we've both voiced this, though apparently this was on the bingo board. There was a bingo board, by the way, in case you didn't listen to the last episode. There was a bingo board for
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we can do that. Send that over to me, and I will make sure it goes into the show notes. One of them was asking why reserve tanks exist, which I didn't do, but I did think, and never said out loud, I guess. And you also had pointed out that you had an issue with that, is that reserve tanks are pointless.
They're just worse energy tanks.
They're energy tanks that when you go to 0 health, the game has to stop for like a full second to give you your health back.
And recharge rooms don't fill them.
And I understand what they were going for. I really do. They were going for the same feeling that you get in like Link to the Past when you grab a fairy. They're fairies. But the difference being that fairies, you don't have to charge them unless you count having to go catch them. But like I wouldn't, because if you don't catch the fairy, you don't have it in the first place. So it's not really the same thing. But also B, they fill up more than 1 pip, which each reserve tank only fills up 1.
I also think in this regard that the reserve tanks are a little too good, because the one of the interesting things about the fairy is that you're grabbing that fairy at the expense of having anything else in that bottle. So it's a choice to have that extra health instead of another possibly useful item. In Super Metroid, the reserve tanks are just a regular energy tank that's just more obnoxious.
Pretty much. They should just be energy tanks, like 100%. They'd make a lot more sense as that. That being said, Super Metroid is really cool. I like this game a lot.
The world design in this game is excellent. Like the level design and everything. It is so. I follow Mark Brown on YouTube. He does a series called Boss Keys, where right now he's examining the level design in Metroidvania games, and he covered Super Metroid, and he does a far better job explaining this than I could, and anything I say would largely just be plagiarizing him. But he goes over in detail like how this game is so carefully set up to teach you how to play, especially because there were no games like this at the time. Like there's at one point before you loop back around to your ship for the first time, you go through one of those doors where you have to shoot it to open it. Or it's like a gate that you shoot it from one side to open it, and then once you're on the other side, you can't shoot it again. You can't get back through there. And what that does is it limits the area that you can play in, so that early in the game, when you're still not used to it, you don't get really lost. And the smaller playable space makes it more manageable for you to remember where you've been, where you can go, where you need to go. And stuff like that is really important for like making this game so easily playable. And everything is telegraphed. Everything, everywhere you need to go is telegraphed. Even the things that are more obtuse, like in the wrecked ship, there's one point where you need to just blindly bomb through one area, and that's the way that they give you the hint there is that you can visibly see the area that you're going to, so you know that area has to be there. So it's really easy to narrow down, well, where could I bomb? And I mean, by then you have the power bombs, so it's super easy to just bomb a whole room at once. The entrance to Kraid's lair, you found that because you were like, oh, well, it's on the map. There has to be a way to get there.
Yeah. And people were surprised when I found that on my own, but yeah, it was literally just like, I can see it. It's on the map, so obviously somewhere in this room, I got a bomb somewhere. I'll find it eventually.
And the only thing that I don't feel is telegraphed very well is the tube that you have to break open with the power bomb. I would say that that's a little too obtuse, because the solution to it is to see another room in the game that's a broken open tube and just assume there's a way to do that yourself.
I don't know. So like, I also figured that out on my own, and I'm not actually 100% sure how.
We kind of helped you with it. We told you that there was something you were able to do there. But so, there is one failsafe to make sure that you know how to do it. And it's kind of dumb. You know how when you leave the game on the title screen without pressing start and it starts showing gameplay?
That's how I learned how to get the boss doors.
Yeah.
The gross eye doors.
Yeah, it shows Samus breaking open that tube with the power bomb in that loop.
Oh, well, there you go. I feel like there's quite a few things that I specifically learned from watching that footage, like while waiting to set up a stream.
I guess it goes to show you should watch that footage more often.
I guess so. Like, I don't know. I don't remember what else I would have learned from that, but I feel like I did learn quite a bit. And yeah, like, you bring up the whole thing of like, it restricts your area, and I didn't actually think of that. I've never thought of that. The whole time I was playing, I didn't think that, oh, it's locking me in this room because there's something I have to learn how to do. Like, I think one of the first instances of that is when shortly after you get the bombs for the first time, and you have to bomb a bunch of blocks to get through a tube, and then you go to bomb the blocks to get out after getting the item that's past the tube, and that's how the game teaches you, because you've got to just sit there while the bombs get ready to explode, but then the bomb sends you upwards into another tube that's right above the tube you just went through, and that teaches you two things. One, bombs make you jump when you ball, which, yeah, I'm going to leave that sentence as is. And two, there are tubes that, like, sometimes you just might not see them, but you can still go through them.
Yeah.
I never got the X-ray. Okay, that's a lie. I did get the X-ray beam, and then I died, and then I decided I have to use the grapple beam to get the X-ray thing. I don't care. And then never got it again.
Which I think it was worth it, personally. But yeah, you do you. You beat the game without it.
There are a lot of times when I feel like it would have been better if I had it, but at the same time, I hated the grapple beam that much. I totally could have gone and got it after I got the space jump, but by that point, like, I was on my way to go fight Ridley. Why do I care? I'm almost done with the game.
Yeah, so the game is at the beginning very linear, until it opens up a lot when you get the power bombs, and I love how carefully it's set up to teach you all those things, like the way that it teaches you the bomb jump, like you just mentioned. I thought that was like genius. It sets you up to learn all of these things by accident, so that you don't feel like you're being taught. You feel like you're discovering them naturally.
And like I've talked about that in the past when we played Sonic 2, and how like Mystic Hill Zone did that. And I really appreciate being able to see like working examples of that kind of design, because it's hard to do. It's not easy. If you do it wrong in one direction, then the player doesn't learn a damn thing. and then they can't figure out what they're supposed to do. And if you do it wrong in the other direction, then it just feels like the player's, listening to a lecture about how to play the video game they're playing.
And I think Super Metroid does it perfectly.
I agree. I agree with that.
It's just such a well-designed game. It's so carefully designed, every bit of it. Like, every problem that I have is a nitpick. Like, Dragon's kind of lame. Those black space pirates that are a bitch to fight are irritating.
I agree, and if you had to fight them any more than one time, then I would have been furious.
Yeah, like, they're a mini-boss, basically. Whatever, I'll take it. But just on the whole, this game is just so perfectly well-tuned.
I think there's a very good reason why this is still, to this day, most of the time, the GDQ finale. Like, obviously, very recently, they've kind of shied away from that for fear that it's getting stale. But, like, I think there's a reason why for so long, this is the game that was the finale.
Yeah, because, it's effectively the perfect speedrun game. It represents that whole subculture. And you finally know what Save the Animals means.
I do, and I didn't do it.
Yeah, you sure didn't, buddy.
You did, though, so it's okay. One of us saved the animals, and in the end, that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing that we're not playing Metroid Fusion, I guess, because the animals come back in Metroid Fusion.
Oh, no!
And
I've destroyed the timeline.
Yeah, you destroyed the timeline. Canonically, Super Metroid is in the timeline, it is the final game that we will be playing, which is really weird and messed up, but we're actually going to be going backwards in the timeline. Our next game is Metroid Prime, and then Metroid Zero Mission.
And then Metroid Prime 2.
Yep.
That's a weird order. So we'll be playing a 3D Metroid game, going back to 2D Metroid, and then returning to 3D Metroid to round it all out.
Yep. And then someday I got to get you to play Metroid Fusion, because
someday. I'm pretty sure I have it on 3DS.
Yeah, Ambassador Program.
Not touched it. Yeah, it was an Ambassador game. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the only way there are Game Boy Advance games on the 3DS.
Oh yeah, true. That's fair.
Metroid Fusion, though, is really fascinating in how... So everything that we're describing about Super Metroid, it throws that away on purpose for the sake of the story. And it works. Like, it really works, and it really does a very effective job at telling the story that it wants to tell. And the gameplay is still super fun and satisfying, even though it's a drastic departure for a specific reason. And it's just... Metro Fusion is really good, and it doesn't get enough play. And when are we getting another game in that timeline?
Why would we ever? Metroid is dead. It's not dead. It is on life support. No.
It's not on life support. That series is very much alive. I mean, the Prime 4 delay was unfortunate, but it didn't happen because they don't have faith in the franchise.
Yeah.
Samus Returns was a success. Prime 4 is happening. Metroid's back, baby.
Sure is. We got here just in time.
Yeah.
To this stuff. You get it. You get it.
I hope that you get into this series now. Fusion's not part of our list, so just pick it up, play it sometime. Samus Returns isn't part of our list. Give that a try. I think if you liked this game, if you like Metroidvanias, every Metroid has something worth playing.
Well, we still got 3 more just on this list alone.
I don't think there's a single bad Metroid game that wasn't released in the year 2010 to 2011.
I feel like you're casting a wide net there. So I really don't have a lot more to say about the gameplay of Super Metroid. Space Jump / Screw Attack, I think, are my favorite power-ups. Even though it was very hard to get the rhythm for me. And also, like, the Wii U D-pad is not built for
Sucks. It
2D
sucks.
games. Like, the Wii U Pro Controller D-pad is not built for 2D games. It is too sensitive on the diagonals.
I'm starting to think
and-
the Super Nintendo one isn't either, because it physically hurts to use the Super Nintendo D-pad.
Well, like, for like the space jump specifically, I would have points where Samus would just stop doing space jump.
Her timing on the space jump is really weird. And
Well,
so-
like, it's the thing is that she seems to be very sensitive to changes in direction, to sudden changes in direction while you do it. And unfortunately, the Wii U Pro Controller is not great at not doing that. Because it was like the problem with playing these older 2D games on new modern D-pads is that modern D-pads are made with 3D games in mind first.
yes.
So they're just naturally a lot more sensitive than you're going to find in like a SNES controller. SNES controller had its own problems, like you just mentioned. It's a hand cramp machine from hell. So is the NES controller. So is the... Has Nintendo ever had a good controller that's not the GameCube controller?
Uh,
I don't think they have.
no.
Because after the SNES controller, it's the 64 controller, which, don't get me wrong, that controller is near and dear to my heart. That controller is one of the worst controllers Nintendo has ever made.
GameCube controller's great. I think the Wii remote was very good at what it was doing. Let's be honest, that was a good
Okay,
controller.
I'd agree with that.
Honestly, Wii remote nunchuck was pretty damn good. If it had a second D-pad, then, or if it had a second analog stick, then what could you even want from it?
That's fair.
The Wii U Pro Controller, obviously, you've gone down the list of problems. Joy-Con's analog sticks are garbage. The Pro Controller's D-pad is garbage.
Yep. Yeah. So
yeah, when are we gonna get another GameCube controller?
I mean, technically, we have GameCube controllers. They just only work
Constantly.
for one game.
No, they work for any game that that accepts a USB controller.
Really?
Yeah, no, like
so I
like-
could play some of the Switch games. Well, I guess they haven't released any older games on Switch. Damn it.
they released Mega Man.
Damn it. I should try and play Mega Man with that controller.
Yeah, no,
Sounds like a fun
and it's
time.
actually, it becomes the easiest way to play like those multiplayer indie games.
I'll remember that when Cuphead comes out. All right. I don't have anything else to talk about gameplay wise. Do you want to jump into the soundtrack or do you got some more stuff?
I got a couple small things to talk about.
Floor is yours.
So on the subject of space jump, I like wall jumping better. I would rather just keep doing cool wall jumps than use the space jump, but whatever. It's hard for me to say that I have any particular affinity for any of the abilities in Super Metroid, because I don't want to say that they were generic or anything, because this game defined Samus's power set, but I played basically the entire rest of the series before playing Super Metroid, so I've seen all of these before. On the subject of Ridley, our boy, the reason that we are playing this video game, Ridley in Smash Brothers encapsulates Ridley the boss perfectly, I think. I think that Ridley plays just like his boss fight, except for the fact that his tail has a hitbox, which, what are you even doing? But we wanted Ridley for 20 years, and we got him. And it feels great. It feels beautiful.
Ridley, for a long time, I think the joke was made by one of our friends that he was the one character that, like, every single entry he got farther away or closer to being in Smash without being in Smash. Where, like, in 64, he shows up in the background of Planet Zebes. In Melee, he's in the FMV intro. In Brawl, he's a boss. In Wii U, he's a stage hazard. And then they finally made him a playable character.
Finally. And he was the very first character for Ultimate... Well, no, I guess Inklings were, but who even? It's Inklings were announced so early, and they were such a given that I don't consider them a newcomer.
And if you're really like looking at details here, Daisy also was announced before Ridley.
Yes,
If you're really splitting hairs.
that is true. You are correct.
But Ridley was still like the big E3 finisher.
Yeah, and I also just want to talk about Ridley as a character for a little bit because we're not going to have the opportunity to do that again. Ridley the character is so fucking cool. And like him and Samus have the realest beef. Like there's one game in the franchise where like Ridley's not even a part of the plot yet. He just shows up, and it's like immediately they just start throwing down. No words, no explanation needed. They just fucking start fighting each other. And it's awesome. And Ridley is consistently the best boss in the game, in every game that he's in. He's so great. He's so cool. His character, like in the supplemental materials where it's like he's extremely intelligent and extremely vicious, is all also really great. Because in case anyone doesn't know, Ridley isn't like a mindless monster. He's highly, extremely intelligent. He just physically doesn't have the vocal cords to speak,
which actually makes him scarier.
Yes.
Like, giant dragon, but dragon is also really, really smart. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And he's ruthless. Like he is evil. He in the manga, which is canon, he kills Samus's parents for fun. Like purposefully murders them right in front of her. He's just one of the coolest villains in the world. I love him, and it's so cool to have him in Smash Brothers.
I agree. I'm very bad at him, but our friend Jesse is basically once Ridley was announced for the game, they were just like, I'm playing as Ridley. I don't care if he sucks. I don't care if he's top tier. I'm playing as Ridley. They still have not like dropped that. They play as Ridley, and they're really good as Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
So it meant a lot to people for him to end up in Smash.
Yeah. And one more thing before we go on to soundtracks. How about that baby?
The baby.
So it does kind of suck that Other M ruined the concept of the baby forever, because I kind of like the baby Metroid as a character and like the whole arc that it goes through. It's not a very deep or complicated arc, but I think it's a good one.
It's just a baby bird. The first thing it saw was Samus, and so that's its mom now.
Yeah. One of the big fan theories is that the way that the baby Metroid recognizes Samus, like during the part where it's draining her health, is when it hears the health warning go off, because it remembers that from the fight with Ridley at the beginning of the game. That's a fan theory, but it's one that I like. I think that they do a really good job making the baby emote just through the way that it moves. I think that the way they do the storytelling, where there's no dialogue past the intro cutscene, but like you still know what's going on. I think that's all great.
Well, like when you beat Ridley, you walk into like this back room, and there's the tube that the Metroid was in, the baby was in, and it's broken, and the Metroid's nowhere to be found.
Like the reward for that fight, you don't get a reward for that fight because it was supposed to be you saved the baby, and it's gone. I don't know, man. I could go on about this game for a long time. There's so much good about this game. And God, Super Metroid's so good. It's so good.
I agree. Let's talk about a soundtrack. Obviously, I think the most, there are two really iconic songs that came out of this game, I think. The first being the opening. Like it's this is the opening to a horror game.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It sets the tone really well. And it's unnerving. And then it like goes into the proper theme of Super Metroid, so to speak.
Which also sounds like a horror game.
Yes. It's also got the it's got this triumphant bit to it too. The sound design in this game is really good. I'm struggling to like describe this because there's not a lot of soundtracks that are like this in 16-bit era games, because it's more atmospheric than it is melodic, and we hadn't really got to a time in game design where we had atmospheric soundtracks instead of the melodic soundtracks with strong melodies to make use of the few sound channels that they had. This is a really unique soundtrack for that era. And it sets that tone right away, where it doesn't have a very strong melody at the start. It has an atmosphere. And the opening does that really well.
Mm-hmm. And the other big iconic song that came out of this game, I would say, is the song that plays during the Dragon boss fight. And I guess the Ridley boss fight, too.
Yeah, nowadays that is Ridley's theme, even though
that is called Versus Ridley now.
even though it was Dragon's first.
Yeah, but Dragon's dumb and I hate him, so he doesn't get it.
He's sure no Ridley. Something that I want to bring up is these songs don't have proper names, so it's kind of hard to bring it up. But it's the music that plays during Green Brinstar, during the jungle portion of Brinstar.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too.
So, did you know that this song is in Smash Brothers?
It's the Metroid Prime 2 multiplayer song, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
of all
I recognize part of the melody.
It's such a weird place for it to come back.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, when we get to that game, we're playing the multiplayer, right?
Probably. Does it have online on Trilogy?
No.
Oh. We'll
That's
figure out a way.
That's not going to stop us.
We'll find a way. Life finds a way. This song is the first like moment in the game where I was like, "Oh, this is like a song that I'm like really really digging," cuz most of this game is a lot of very atmospheric stuff. I don't think I have a lot of songs that I want to point out for the purposes of this show, not because like it's not for the same reason as Link to the Past, where I'm just like, this game doesn't have as good a soundtrack as I thought it would, but it's more just, it's a lot more atmospheric than it is something that's really gonna pop out at you and you say, oh man, that's a really good song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also want to give a special shout out to the music that plays during Lower Norfair on the way to Ridley. Lower Norfair theme has kind of been reused in later Metroid games as like, this is the place where there's fire. It's this cross section between atmospheric and melodic, and it just does this. It has such a sinister tone to it, and it's this tension rising through the entire song that doesn't really get released until you finally fight Ridley. And it's such a really good song, and I think it's the culmination of you are on the way to the climax of this game. And I really feel like the Ridley fight is the most exciting part of the game.
I agree.
So it's such a well-placed song. It's such a well-composed song. It's real good. Very, very good.
I don't really have another song that I want to point out. I don't know if you do.
I think the song that it's called The Theme of Samus. Which I think this would later get replaced by other songs and is no longer her theme. But it's the song that first plays when you get back to your ship on Criteria. It's a very triumphant tune that's kind of like, you know, when you're first on Criteria after your ship lands, you know, you're weak, you're underpowered, and then you do that loop through the world, and now you're so much stronger than you were. You're ready to take on anything. Like, the music is reflecting that. And this theme plays again in one other place in the game, which is in the Mother Brain fight, where the after you get the hyper beam from the baby, and it's just this moment of like, Samus is powerful, Samus is a warrior, and Samus is gonna fuck your shit up.
Is this our first? I guess technically it's not, but I'm gonna say it is. Is this our first female protagonist? Is this our only female protagonist? No, Bayonetta. We'll play Bayonetta. Are those our only two female protagonists? I think they might
so.
Because, like, the closest we've gotten before this is Peach is playable.
Corin.
I'm not gonna count ones. I'm not gonna count ones where you can play as a male or a female, because then, like, all the Pokemon games we're playing have that option.
Ice Climber.
Nana's
kind
not
of.
real.
Wii Fit.
I guess technically, Wii Fit Trainer is the protagonist of Wii Fit, the great fitness epic of our time.
Splatoon.
Splatoon, I'll take. Nobody gives a shit about male Inkling. Splatoon, I'll take. But yeah,
you played as Peach for Mario 2.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. Was like that's the closest we've gotten so far. I don't know.
That's not looking good for representation in video games.
It's almost like that's only a recent thing that's changing. So before we move on,
I like how, like, after Samus and Bayonetta, the first one I thought of was Corin.
So before we move on, let's announce one thing real quick, being that we said last episode that we were going to give Wario a redo because it was only fair to him.
Oh God, I forgot about this. This was like 8 years ago.
And we put up a poll that went for 5 days on Twitter between Wario Land, between Wario World, Smooth Move, fucking shit. Between Wario Land, Smooth Moves, WarioWare.
You said it. What?
Fucking god damn it!
Leave all of this in.
Fuck that. Between Wario Land Shake It, WarioWare Smooth Moves, and Wario Land 2. God fucking damn it. Had a stroke trying to say 3 game titles. In the end, it ended with a tie between Shake It and Smooth Moves. So I asked on Twitter, hey, if you voted for Wario Land 2 and it wasn't there, what would you have voted for? And we got 2 votes for Shake It and 1 vote for Smooth Moves. So I called it there. Shake It won. So we will be playing Wario Land Shake It in the future. When we get to it, it's just getting put onto the list chronologically like everything else.
For episode 15, Epsilon.
Yep, pretty much. And so we will get to that eventually and play it. And yeah. So that's that.
And that's the way it is.
Anyways, are you ready to move on to our next game?
No.
Me neither, but let's do it anyways. Our next game.
So hey, how what do you think of the idea of like the first episode after we officially become part of a big Nintendo site is we just spend a lot of time heavily disliking one of the most beloved Nintendo games of all time?
We'll have to see. Our next game, representing fighter number 10, Ness, who I believe is the second... Yeah, he is the second lowest number. Kirby is the only character we have done a game for that is lower than him. It was released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. Our next game is Earthbound.
Okay. So, historically, I've been pretty down on this game, but let's be honest. I played a half hour of it when I was like 12.
Yeah.
Effectively, I've never played Earthbound.
So my story for playing Earthbound is roughly the same in that I was visiting my mother's cousin's house and sleeping in her son's room. And he had a Super Nintendo. And one of the games he had was Earthbound. And I was like, Ness is from this game. I can learn where Ness is from finally. And I played it for 30 minutes. And I got bodied by an enemy in the starting town. Turned off the game and played Super Mario World instead.
Did you ever go back to it?
I have never gone back to Earthbound.
Okay,
I've played Mother 3.
So let's recap. So both of us, at a young age when our tastes weren't fully formed, played less than the introduction of the game, decided we hated it, and have carried that hate into adulthood.
Pretty much. That being said, I have watched an LP of Earthbound, which was, at the time, my go-to joke was, that was much more enjoyable than playing Earthbound. The story and writing in Earthbound is incredible. It is amazing, and I feel like the whole argument you just brought up of the our tastes weren't fully formed yet, that might actually work into this, because when I was young, if you would have put me in front of Journey, for instance, I would have said, like, what do you do? This game's boring. Why am I playing this?
Okay, so effectively, neither of us have played Earthbound.
Pretty
period.
much.
We don't... God, we've been joking this entire time that we're gonna have to about how we're both gonna hate this game, and now it's actually like we haven't.
Well, like, because this is gonna be a this is gonna be a multi-part game. Like, this game is gonna take us at least 3 to 4 parts. Right now, I'm projecting it being 4 parts.
Okay,
to play through Earthbound,
okay,
and
yes, that is terrifying.
I really don't want it to be 4 episodes of us just trashing on this game.
I don't think it will be. Let's be 100% honest. No jokes, no exaggeration. We're probably gonna like this game.
I have a feeling that I'm going to enjoy this game a lot more than I think I am.
Yeah.
I do know that this is one of the games that people have told me, like, have a walkthrough open. Some of this shit's so obtuse, and it's quirky, and sometimes that works to its detriment.
I want the experience that a Japanese child in the mid-90s would have had.
So, of course, for anybody that does not know, Earthbound is the second game in the Mother franchise. I don't believe we never got the first game.
We did, but it was years later.
Several years later. We almost got it earlier
More
than
than
that.
several.
We almost got it earlier than that because it almost came out on the GBA, but it did not. Yeah.
So, no, it was fully localized for the NES.
It was fully localized for the NES, and then they were going to release a GBA port that was Mother 1 and Earthbound, and that also, like, there are cartridges of that exist, but I don't believe it was ever sold. Like, it never actually made it to storefronts.
Earthbound didn't sell very well in America.
Earthbound did not sell very well at all, which is why it's for a long time, it was the only Mother game that we ever got. Ever.
Whoops.
Oh boy. But it has a huge cult following. Like, Earthbound probably has one of the biggest cult followings in video games in general.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and like nowadays, NES is being kept alive by Smash. Without Smash, a majority of people would not know who NES was.
Well, I mean, the guy that's in charge of the franchise expressly doesn't want to make another one.
Well, also, the guy that's in charge of the franchise isn't a video game developer. So did you know that? Shigesato Itoi is not a video game developer.
I learned that
actor.
today.
I learned this recently. He has made 4 video games, 3 of them Mother games. One of them a bass fishing game. But he's not a game developer by trade. He is an actor. For instance, one of his most famous roles is he plays the dad in My Neighbor Totoro in Japanese.
He also owns a company that makes like IT products and stuff, I think.
He's just one of those weird dudes that does everything because he's rich and he can do whatever the hell he wants.
He also happened to be personal friends with Satoru Iwata.
Yes. And
which is probably a big part of how
absolutely
of how the Mother franchise got made. But also he's very outspoken in the fact that Mother 3 is the ending of the series. He ended it the way that he wanted to, and he will never make another.
I respect that so heavily.
Yes, but also, what if we got a port?
We won't.
No, we won't. No, we won't.
That
I'm
game's
telling you,
never coming out in America. I hate to break it to everybody listening, but that game is never coming out in America.
Yeah, no, I strongly believe that Mother 3 will not come to America anytime soon. I'm not going to say never, because who can possibly say never? But I can confidently say I do not believe that an English port of Mother 3 is currently in development.
That being said, yeah, this is our first RPG. We're gonna hit one more just in this set alone, and then we're not gonna hit another one for quite a long time, actually. But this is our first RPG. This is our third non-platformer of the entire run. Because, well, that depends on whether or not you classify Super Metroid as technically being a platformer, which I kind of do. There's platforming elements. But, like, it's this, Duck Hunt, and Street Fighter, and Zelda. Sorry, this is the fourth non-platformer that we will play during this entire run. We're starting to hit the point where platformers just aren't the game that gets made. And that's kind of cool from like a historical standpoint.
And it's also really terrifying from a oh my god, we have to make an episode about this game by playing the entire thing standpoint.
So I'm experimenting with something. We're going to experiment with a method of deciding when episodes get
No, I'm sorry.
recorded.
Before we move on from that platformer comment, I just counted between now and the release of Super Smash Bros. 64. There are 2 platform games, maybe 3 if you count Yoshi's Story.
Yoshi's Story is a platformer. So
There are 3.
boy,
The era of platformers is over.
Like, isn't that super interesting though? From a historical standpoint, we have played 17 games now, or this will be our 17th game, and 4 of them weren't platformers, and now we're hitting an era where like 3 from here to 1998 are platformers.
That's kind of nuts, yeah.
That being said,
also a good time for our show to go onto a new distribution system.
Yeah, that's, not a bad moment. So, here is the plan. Well, the quote-unquote plan, because this might work, this might not work. I don't know. I'm trying to scroll up and find the image I sent you. I don't remember when I sent it. Shit. There it is. Okay. So I pulled up the walkthrough from starmen.net. Shout out to them. They are probably the biggest Mother fan site on the internet. In fact, I don't even know why I said probably. They are the biggest Mother fan site on the internet. And they have a full walkthrough for the game. I didn't read the walkthrough. I just looked at the quote-unquote chapter list they have, and I have vague memories of these moments in the games, and I have 4 sections outlined. Now, whether or not we keep to these, that's up in the air. I don't know. This is meant to be an experiment to try and figure out how we can handle RPGs in the future, because obviously we're going to hit more, and they're all going to be multi-part games. And I figured the best place to experiment with this is the one that's only about 30 hours long.
Oh, only 30 hours. What a relief.
Only 30 hours. This is the longest game we have played so far. This will be, like, easily the longest game we've played so far. So, this first episode, my plan is to record the first episode of Earthbound shortly after we finish the Lilliput Steps.
I don't know what that means.
Which is shortly after Happy Happy Village. I don't remember what the Lilliput Steps mean, but boy do I remember what Happy Happy Village means.
I'll take your word for it.
The second part, the current plan, is after the Monopoly building, which is shortly after Moonside. After that is the Stonehenge base. And then, ideally, the fourth part would be the final episode of Earthbound, where we would talk about the ending. Now again, these are not concrete. Things might happen, and we might get farther than I anticipated. We might not get as far as I anticipated. Who knows? We are kind of winging it from here. This is a new thing. This is the longest game we've played so far. Boy, this could either be great or a disaster.
Let's find out together.
Let's find out together like a family.
That's okay. It's warm up for just a couple games from now when we play the seminal JRPG of all time.
No pressure, right?
Yeah.
To put it in context, like, according to How Long to Beat, this game is about as long as a first playthrough through a modern Zelda game would be. According to How Long to Beat. Now, granted, How Long to Beat could be full of shit. I don't know. How Long to Beat says that Mario 64 is 13 and a half hours long, and I know. But
what did How Long to Beat say for Super Metroid?
It said 7.5 hours.
Yeah, we both beat it in under 5.
No, 11 hours, according to my math.
Oh, your in-game time. Sorry.
Oh, in-game times, yeah, but I'm talking like actual time spent playing the game. When I try to figure out my final times, I just add the length of all my streams.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, who knows how this is gonna go? Do you got anything else about Earthbound, or should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. I truthfully don't know a damn thing about Earthbound.
I know a little bit about Earthbound, and I am hoping that I am correct in that we will like it more than we expect to. That being said, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at the Debaga. Matt is at Grimace Doominus. If you go to anondino.squarespace.com, you can find our website, which has a link to the full list of all the games we will be playing for this project. You can also find links to both of our Twitch accounts, where sometimes we will be streaming these games. Other times, it'll probably be on the Nintendo World Report channel, depending.
It'll be on the Nintendo World Report TV YouTube channel. We're still gonna figure out how exactly we're gonna do that, because I don't know if people just want to watch both of us stream the same sections of games
Especially
over and
for
over.
something like Earthbound.
So, let us know on Twitter if that's what you want to do, or if you want to figure out some way where it's like, Joe streams one section of the game, then I stream the next section of the game, and we'll alternate who's on Twitch and who's on the YouTube. Let us know on Twitter how you'd prefer to see that go down.
We'll figure it out. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Smashterpieces. And that's really about it. Follow us, rate, review.
And subscribe to Nintendo World Report TV.
And also subscribe to the podcast if you're not. And give us a rating and a review, please. It matters. It does matter.
Yeah.
Tell your friends. Tell all of your friends.
Search engine optimization is important. And commenting on the Nintendo World Report posts lets our bosses, John and Neil, know that we're doing a good job.
And then they pay us. They don't pay us.
They don't pay us. I mean,
we're volunteers.
We get paid in all of these free video games we're getting for a review.
We get paid in exposure and free video games, but mostly that first thing. So, with that, my name is Joe.
My name is Matt.
And we'll see you next time for our first part on Earthbound.